My sister-in-law bought a house in my name. I found out when the bank called about late payments. My name is James. I am 34 years old. I live in Chicago, Illinois, and 2 years ago I was illegally evicted from my apartment in the middle of January. Temperature outside was 11 degrees. By a landlord who had decided that the correct response to a maintenance dispute was to change my locks while I was at work and leave my belongings in garbage bags on the sidewalk. He did not know I was a housing attorney. Let me give you the full picture because the full picture is what makes this story worth telling. I had been renting my apartment for 3 years. The building was owned by a man named Gerald who had 12 rental properties across Chicago and who ran his portfolio with the particular confidence of someone who had operated for 20 years without meaningful accountability. Gerald was not the worst landlord I had encountered in my professional life, and as a housing attorney I had encountered many, but he was consistent in his indifference to tenant rights and his belief that owning property gave him authority that the law did not actually provide. My specific issues with Gerald began 8 months before the eviction. My apartment had a heating problem, a radiator that functioned intermittently, and that I had reported to Gerald in writing on 4 separate occasions. Gerald had sent a maintenance person twice. The maintenance person had looked at the radiator both times and declared it fine. The radiator continued to function intermittently. I continued to document. In November, Gerald informed me by text message that he was raising my rent by 40% effective the following month. This was not legally permissible under Chicago's residential landlord and tenant ordinance given my lease terms and the timeline. I responded in writing explaining this and citing the specific ordinance provisions. Gerald responded with a text that said, "Find somewhere else to live then." I documented that text. In January, Gerald changed my locks. I came home from work on a Tuesday evening to find a different key did not work and garbage bags containing what appeared to be my belongings stacked outside the building entrance. The temperature was 11 degrees. My neighbors who were home reported later that Gerald had been in the building that afternoon with a locksmith. I called the police from the sidewalk. The responding officers were sympathetic but explained that landlord-tenant disputes were civil matters and outside their immediate jurisdiction. I called a colleague, another housing attorney, who came to meet me and who documented everything with photographs and video. I spent that night at a hotel. I kept the receipt. The following morning, I filed an emergency motion with the Cook County Circuit Court for an order of immediate possession. The judge granted it within 4 hours. Gerald was served by afternoon. By evening, I was back in my apartment with the original locks restored under court order. That was the end of what Gerald thought was his problem. It was actually the beginning of mine, which was also the beginning of a much larger problem for Gerald. Over the following 3 months, I built a case that went significantly beyond my individual situation. I pulled building inspection records for all 12 of Gerald's properties. I reviewed housing court records for complaints and citations. I contacted tenants at his other properties carefully with proper documentation of consent and found a pattern of conduct that was consistent, documented, and in several cases significantly more serious than what I had experienced. Gerald had been operating with outstanding building code violations across 7 of his 12 properties for periods ranging from 18 months to 4 years. He had a pattern of retaliatory conduct against tenants who complained. Altered leases, manufactured lease violations, informal evictions similar to mine. He had collected security deposits in violation of Chicago's RLTO requirements, not recording them properly, not paying interest, not returning them within the legally required time frame. I compiled everything into a formal complaint to the City of Chicago's Department of Housing, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, and the Illinois Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. I filed simultaneously on a Thursday morning in April. The investigations that followed took 8 months. I was not the lead complainant in most of them. I had referred tenant witnesses who were willing to participate, and the governmental bodies conducted their own investigations with their own resources. I provided documentation and was available for consultation. The outcomes were comprehensive. Gerald received building code violation orders on 7 properties that required immediate remediation at his expense. 3 properties were placed under court-supervised receivership because the violations were serious enough that the court determined Gerald could not be trusted to remediate them independently. He was fined by the city. The state attorney's office filed civil fraud charges related to the security deposit violations, and the AG's office pursued a consumer protection action. Gerald ultimately lost 11 of his 12 properties, some through foreclosure resulting from the remediation costs and fines, some through court-ordered sale as part of the fraud settlement, one voluntarily to avoid additional legal exposure. He retained one property, a single-family home he occupied himself, and faced a payment plan for the remaining fines and restitution to affected tenants. I received a settlement for my individual case, the illegal lockout, the heating violations, the retaliatory rent increase. That covered my hotel costs, my damages, and a statutory penalty amount that Chicago's RLTO provides specifically to deter this kind of conduct. My total out-of-pocket from the night Gerald locked me out: one hotel night, one dinner, one breakfast. My recovery: full statutory damages. Gerald's outcome: 11 properties gone. I moved out of that apartment 6 months after everything was resolved. Not because Gerald, who no longer owned the building, had any ability to affect me, but because the building had been acquired by a property management company during the receivership process, and I had found a better apartment in a building owned by a landlord I had researched thoroughly beforehand. The garbage bags on the sidewalk in 11-degree weather were his opening move. The mistake was not knowing who he was playing against. Update: 4 months later, a former tenant from one of Gerald's other buildings contacted me 6 months ago. She wanted to thank me. She had been living in a building with serious mold issues for 2 years and had been afraid to complain because of stories about what Gerald did to tenants who caused problems. When the city investigation began, she was finally able to report her situation and get it addressed. She said her daughter's chronic respiratory issues had improved significantly since the mold was remediated. I am a housing attorney. I handle cases like this professionally. But sitting in my office reading her email, I felt something that reminded me why I became one. Gerald sent me a letter through his attorney 8 months ago that I can only describe as a grievance document. A lengthy complaint about the unfairness of what had happened to him and the disproportionate consequences of what he characterized as minor landlord-tenant disputes. I forwarded it to my file without responding. So read it: was I wrong to go beyond my individual case and build a broader complaint? Because Gerald's attorney said I had weaponized my professional expertise to destroy a legitimate businessperson over a personal dispute. But 11 degrees, garbage bags, and a little girl who can breathe better now. Tell me what you think. My sister-in-law borrowed my identity to get a mortgage. The house was in my name, and I never knew until the bank called my name is Nicole. I am 38 years old. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and 3 years ago I received a phone call from a mortgage servicer about a payment that was 30 days past due on a property I had never heard of at an address I did not recognize for a loan I had never taken out. The loan was in my name. The house was in my name. The mortgage payment was my legal obligation. I had known nothing about any of it for 2 years and 4 months. My sister-in-law's name is Diane. She is my husband's younger sister, 41 years old, and she had been a peripheral but consistent presence in our lives since my husband Robert and I got married 9 years ago. Diane was not someone I had ever been close to. She was pleasant enough at family gatherings, but we did not have the kind of relationship that involved private conversations or significant trust. She was Robert's sister, and I treated her with the warmth appropriate to that relationship and nothing more. Diane had wanted to buy a house for years. She had the income. She worked as a dental hygienist with a stable salary. But her credit history was damaged by decisions she had made in her 20s that she had never fully repaired. Her credit score was too low for conventional mortgage approval, and she had been unable to qualify for the loan amount she needed for properties in her target area. What Diane had was access. She had access because Robert had given her access. Not to my identity specifically. Robert had shared our home's Wi-Fi password, our Netflix account, various household conveniences with his sister over the years in the casual way that people share things with family. At some point, Diane had accessed a shared cloud storage folder that Robert and I used for household documents. In that folder were our tax returns, our financial statements, and, crucially, documents containing my social security number, my income history, and my credit information. Diane used my information to apply for a mortgage. She used a mortgage broker who, I later discovered, had a history of processing applications without adequate verification, a practice that regulatory actions would later address, though too late for me. She presented documentation that mixed her actual employment information with my credit and financial identity in a way that was fraudulent but that the broker had apparently not examined carefully enough to catch. The loan was approved. The house was purchased. The deed was recorded in my name. The mortgage was in my name. Diane moved in and made payments for 2 years and 4 months before the payments stopped. When the payments stopped, the servicer called me. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after that call. Then I called Robert and told him what the mortgage servicer had said. Robert went very quiet. Then he said he needed to call Diane. I told him to wait and to call my attorney first. My attorney was a woman named Claire who I had used for an unrelated matter 2 years earlier and who answered my call immediately when I explained what had happened. Claire told me to do nothing. Make no payments, speak to no one from the mortgage servicer or any debt collector, contact no family members about specifics, until she could assess the full situation. Claire spent 3 days assessing. What she found confirmed everything the servicer had said and added detail I had not known. The deed was recorded in my name, the mortgage was in my name, Diane was occupying the property, and the property had an additional lien from a home equity line of credit that Diane had taken out in my name 6 months after the original purchase. My name was on a house, a mortgage, and a home equity line of credit. I had equity in a property I had never seen. I had debt in my name that I had not contracted. And my credit, which Claire pulled immediately, showed all of it, the mortgage, the HELOC, and now the late payment that had triggered the servicer's call. Claire filed a police report for identity theft the same day. She contacted the mortgage servicer and the HELOC lender with documentation establishing the fraud. She filed complaints with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Arizona Attorney General's office. Then she called Diane's attorney. Diane had apparently anticipated this moment and had retained someone, and initiated what became a 6-month legal process to untangle everything. The house was sold. Diane had built some equity in it despite the payment issues, and after the mortgage and HELOC were paid off and the legal costs were accounted for, there was a small amount remaining that Claire argued should come to me as partial compensation for the damage to my credit and the costs of the process. Diane's attorney argued it should go to Diane because she had made the payments and maintained the property. The court found in my favor. My credit took 14 months to fully repair. 14 months of letters, disputes, documentation, follow-up calls, and the particular exhausting bureaucracy of proving you did not do something that records suggest you did. Robert's relationship with Diane has not recovered. He told me after the legal process concluded that he understood if I needed him to choose and that he chose me. I told him I had not asked him to choose and that his relationship with his sister was his to navigate. He said it was not navigable from where he was standing. They have spoken twice in 3 years, once at their father's birthday and once when their mother was briefly hospitalized. Diane has not apologized to me directly. She sent a card through Robert's mother that said she was sorry for the pain she had caused and that she hoped things could someday be repaired. I put the card in my file with everything else because documentation is a habit now. Update: 5 months later, Robert's mother asked me 3 months ago if I would be willing to have a conversation with Diane. She framed it carefully, not as reconciliation, not as forgiveness, just a conversation. She said Diane was in therapy and had been working on understanding what she had done and that she wanted to apologize in person. I told Robert's mother I needed time to think about it. I am still thinking about it. The credit is repaired. The legal matters are resolved. The house is sold. What remains is a question about whether a conversation would give me something I need or cost me something I am not willing to spend. I have not decided. What I have decided is that the decision is mine to make on my own timeline and that nobody else's comfort with the unresolved situation factors into when I make it. Robert and I are solid. We went through something that could have broken a marriage and did not break ours. I think that matters. So Reddit, was I wrong to pursue every legal avenue instead of trying to handle it privately first? Because Robert's mother thinks a private conversation with Diane would have been the right first step. But Diane had a mortgage and a home equity line of credit in my name. I am not sure what private conversation addresses that. Seuss Reddit stories? I discovered my financial advisor had been charging me fees for 11 years on an account I didn't know existed. My name is Patricia. I am 52 years old. I live in Seattle, Washington, and 2 years ago I discovered that the financial advisor I had trusted with my retirement savings for 11 years had been managing an account I had never opened, never funded, and never received statements for, and had been charging me annual management fees on it for the entire 11-year period. The fees totaled $43,000. The account had a balance of $0. Let me explain how this is possible because I know it sounds impossible and I want to give you the full picture. I hired my financial advisor, a man named Richard who came highly recommended by a colleague and who had a polished office and confident manner that I had found reassuring at 41 when I was finally taking my retirement planning seriously, 11 years before everything I am about to tell you came to light. Richard managed 2 accounts for me, a traditional IRA and a taxable brokerage account. I received statements for both accounts quarterly, reviewed them with the attention of someone who is not a financial professional but who cares about the general trajectory of her retirement savings. Everything appeared to be functioning appropriately. What I did not know was that Richard had opened a 3rd account. The 3rd account was a managed account product that Richard's firm offered, a specific investment vehicle with its own fee structure. The account had been opened in my name using my identifying information and had been linked to my client file at his firm. I had never authorized the account, never signed documentation for it, and never received statements for it because statements were being sent to an email address that was a variation of mine, 1 letter different, that Richard had apparently entered during account setup. The account was opened, funded briefly from my existing accounts, quickly emptied through fees, and then maintained as an active account structure with a 0 balance but an ongoing management fee assessed annually. Over 11 years, those fees totaled $43,000 extracted from my other accounts in amounts that were small enough in any given quarter to be overlooked in the normal flow of account statements. I found out because I changed financial advisors. My new advisor, a woman named Christine who I found through a referral network specifically for fee-only fiduciaries, conducted what she called an onboarding audit when I transferred my accounts to her management. She pulled every account associated with my social security number and tax identification. The 3rd account appeared in that pull. Christine sat across from me and showed me the account and asked me to explain it to her. I told her I could not because I did not know it existed. She was very still for a moment in the way of someone who understands the significance of what they are looking at. Then she said, "I need to refer you to a securities attorney immediately." The attorney's name was Michael, and he specialized in FINRA disputes and securities fraud. He was familiar with the pattern Christine had identified. It was not the first time he had seen something structured this way. He filed a complaint with FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, and with the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions simultaneously. The investigation took 9 months. Richard's firm cooperated under regulatory pressure. What emerged was that Richard had opened unauthorized accounts for multiple clients. I was not the only one, using a similar mechanism. The variation email address method had allowed him to avoid detection for years because clients were not receiving statements for accounts they did not know existed. The regulatory outcome involved Richard losing his license, his firm paying restitution to affected clients, and a civil settlement that returned the $43,000 in fees I had been charged plus interest and damages. I want to tell you what $43,000 over 11 years actually represents. At a reasonable rate of return invested in my actual retirement accounts over that period, it would have grown to approximately $78,000. I was compensated for the fees. I was not compensated for the opportunity cost because opportunity cost is difficult to quantify in a regulatory settlement, and Michael told me pursuing it further would cost more in legal fees than the likely recovery. I am 62 now. I will retire in a few years. My retirement picture is what it is. Christine has done good work with what I have, and I am on a reasonable track. But somewhere in the back of my accounting there is a $78,000 ghost that represents 11 years of fees on an account I never opened for money I never made because of a man in a polished office who I trusted because someone I knew said he was good. Richard is no longer in the financial services industry. I do not know what he is doing. I have no particular feelings about what he is doing. What I do have is Christine, who sends me clear statements every quarter for accounts I know exist, and a habit of reading every line of every financial document I receive with an attention I did not have before. Update: 3 months later, 2 of the other affected clients contacted me after the regulatory process. They had been given my name as someone willing to speak with others going through the same experience. We have had coffee twice. They are both in their 50s. One of them said something that has stayed with me. She said, I spent 20 years being good with money, and he undid 11 of them, and the thing that makes me angriest is that I trusted him because I thought I was being responsible. That is exactly it. We were being responsible. We were doing what you are supposed to do. Hire a professional, let them manage the complexity, review the statements, trust the system. The system failed us, and the failure cost us in ways that a regulatory settlement covers only partially. I testified at a FINRA proceeding related to Richard's license revocation. I sat in a room and described what had happened in precise detail and answered questions for 2 hours. When it was over, I felt something I had not expected, not closure exactly, but a sense that the record was complete. Everything that had happened was now documented in a permanent official record that said what it said clearly and that Richard could not revise or reframe. The record matters. I am a librarian. I believe in records. So Reddit, was I wrong to pursue the regulatory route rather than a private civil suit? Because my initial instinct was to sue Richard personally, and Michael told me the regulatory route was faster, more certain, and would protect other clients. I followed his advice. But sometimes I wonder what a direct lawsuit would have looked like. Tell me what you think.